Well, thanks everyone for coming along. It's really good to see lots of people from all around the world are listening. We've got a little bit of instruction first. We're going to be showing you a bunch of things on the camera as well as on the screen. So I'm going to share my screen now. I'm going to share the screen that's similar to the one that you're seeing, so I can give you a little bit of advice on how best to size the ratio of the two parts. So bear with me. Okay, so hopefully here now you can see me up at the top and then screen down at the bottom. You need to see both. So we're going to have some slides in one part. We're going to have the demos and stuff at the top, so you'll be able to see us and the things that we wave at you over the camera. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to resize these two things, something like that. You don't need to see me in too much detail, but you will want to see the slides and things at the bottom, and you'll want to see the stuff that we wave around over the top. Okay, brilliant. Right, so if everyone's ready, we'll start the first of the series of webinars, which are going to happen monthly. And the topic for today is going to be IoT devices and their security. And we have a presentation. So let me swap screens and I'll introduce who we are. There we go. So, the Internet of Things that go bump in the night. This is going to be presented to you by myself, James Shuttleworth, and my colleague Dan.
Hi.
So we'll probably swap over at various points. One of us running demos and things with the little bits of devices and stuff that we've got for you, or one speaking. So if you look away and look back and I look quite different, don't panic. It's just because Dan's taken over. Okay, so the Internet of Things that go bump in the night. This is all about IoT. And when we think of titles for this, we actually came up with a few different ones. So we also thought that the Internet of Other People's Things might be quite fun. Or IoT, the S stands for security, which might give you a clue of some of the problems that we're going to see. My other computer is your toaster, which is a reference to the fact that with IoT devices, we're accelerating down the path of having computing in everything. So someone very smart once said that there's no such thing as a car, just a computer that you drive around in. And these days, you're very likely to have a computer that you keep your food cold in, a computer that boils your kettle, or a computer that does your lights. Okay, so introduction. Dan and I are both Coventry University, work in computing, electronics and mathematics, both of us in the cybersecurity area. At the moment, we're actually on a project as part of a national consortium called the Institute of Coding. So over the past year now, we've been looking at ways that we can have more people to understand the importance of things like cybersecurity, programming, artificial intelligence. And as part of that, we do things like this. So brief overview of cybersecurity. This is the briefest overview you'll ever hear. One of the first cybersecurity incidents is something called the Morris worm, 1988. This was almost an accident. So someone invented a piece of code that would transport itself across the network. It didn't require anyone to transfer files. It would actually look for a flaw in another service and move a copy of itself across. This is almost just an experiment to see what would happen if something like this happened. At the time, it was so successful that it took down most of the internet, and the person that wrote it was very apologetic. So since then, we've seen cybersecurity has become a big topic. 10, 15 years ago, we were teaching people how to break into systems so that we could educate them on how to defend themselves, how to detect these problems before the bad guys do. But these days, I think we all know that if this is a really big issue, why are the people doing it? Why are people breaking into things? And actually, it's a very complex set of problems. So people do it because it's quite literally a way to get financial gain. So, steal money, steal valuable information, hold things to ransom, so, demand money. But people do it for all kinds of other reasons as well. So knowing your adversary, can be really, really tricky and intricate, but important. So some people do this because they quite literally just want to attack someone, maybe someone specific website, specific software company, or they just want to get a message across. A lot of people do it because it's a lot of fun, and there's no getting around that. If you're interested in these kind of technical problems, then the challenge of security, can I break into this? Can I work a way around that? Is really, really attractive. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that's been happening over the years. Those kind of people are expanding. More and more people have access to this stuff. More and more people, find an interest. And then we start to see very large-scale events. So Stuxnet, not new, quite a few years old now, but this was a worm. So similar in concept to things like the Morris worm from 1988. But this one targeted specifically Iranian nuclear power stations. So it would actually cause the gyroscopes that were used to spin until they broke down. So they sped the gyroscopes. Centrifuge. Thank you. This is why it's good to have someone else with you. So the centrifuge spin and break. So this worm was not just about causing random damage or making one particular person a lot of money. This was targeted at a nation's nuclear power infrastructure. So now we're seeing at this point very large scale attacks, very, very sophisticated things. And today we're right in the middle of a flood of ransomware of various kinds. So you've probably all heard of things like CryptoLocker, but there have been many, many others since. And it's still a very, very common thing. So with ransomware, the attackers found a really, really clever way to turn your need for data into something that they could make money out of. Up until this point, if you stole data or broke into things, you had to find a way to monetize that. If you're going to make a living out of being a bad guy, you had to find a way to monetize what you stole or what you're doing. And ransomware allows them to monetize our need for that data. Good example of this is the attack in the UK on the NHS from just a couple of years ago. The records and things that were encrypted and taken away from the NHS were not valuable to the people that were doing it, but the need of the NHS for those things was valuable, and that's what they were hoping to get payment for. Moving on a little bit further, just in the past year or so, we've seen things like Mirai. Mirai is another worm. This time it attacks devices that you wouldn't have previously expected. So security cameras and things like that. These are cheap off-the-shelf components that you can go put in your house. So if anyone's got CCTV, you might have an IP camera. They've become really, really cheap devices, but they're actually just computers that have a special kind of case and peripherals attached to them. So when you plug this into the network, it is just like plugging in a new computer. Unfortunately, we don't think of it like that. And as we'll see later, the manufacturers of these devices don't see them like that. And so a small security flaw, and actually in Mirai, it wasn't very complicated in most cases. It was just a matter of knowing the default usernames and passwords. So the worm would use this, and it would actually spread from one camera to another camera to another camera. If you're wondering what's the point in that, apart from the scary nature of someone else looking in on you, these are devices then that are under the control of an attacker. So things like Mirai, they could build what we call a botnet. So all of these cameras might on their own be quite valueless, but if you wanted to attack a large organization, having thousands of these things around the world that can all launch an attack simultaneously is hugely damaging. Okay, so we're talking a lot about the Internet of Things. I think probably most people know what it is in the sort of general sense. What we're talking about here are smart connected devices. So there's a whole range of things that you see on there. Whether you like them or not, they're very, very common. I recently bought a new television and could not find a non-smart TV. Okay, so not one of the televisions that was in the shop that I was looking in had anything less than Wi-Fi, Ethernet, ran something like Android, had various apps installed. Some of them even had their own advertising. So the amount of these devices is growing rapidly. We'll talk about the stats a little bit later. So here you can see 2015, 15.4 billion devices. So this is IoT going upwards and upwards. They predicted 2025, 75 billion devices is not looking that unusual. So that doesn't seem like it's going to be a hard target to hit. Mostly it's driven by people that experimenting at the moment, trying new things out. But in industry, we're seeing things a lot bigger. We'll come on to the industry in a moment. In the home life, we're seeing that anything that can have something smart attached to it is out there. So this is something from DEF CON 22, which is a hacker conference. Very sensible to have an IP camera connected to the internet. So an IoT IP camera makes lots of sense. It allows you to install a camera without thinking too much about wiring. So as long as it's got power, it can use Wi-Fi or it can go across the Ethernet. So it's the same infrastructure as everything else. Saves you having special wires for everything. It means you can access it remotely. It means adding more cameras is very simple. Great, makes a lot of sense. Doorbell seems okay. Door locks, not uncommon now. Also, most door locks that I've seen have been very hackable if they're smart door locks. Right up to what we've got on here is the insane end of the spectrum, such as the egg tray. Okay, so it's an egg tray that will tell your phone whether you've got eggs or not. Could probably go and look in the fridge. Here's an example. So this is the Happy Fork, which you can get on Amazon. Although it's currently unavailable, you can find them in stock. There are different colors. So Bluetooth Smart Enable Fork. So Bluetooth Enable Smart Fork. What is this? What does it do? Well, actually, it stops you from eating too quickly. So it sends data on how quickly you're moving food into your mouth to your phone, so that it can keep track of your eating habits. Quite possibly, for someone very useful. But this has been turned into a product that is for sale. So although we might laugh at this as a strange device to have, there are enough people that want it that someone's somewhere in the world is manufacturing them by the shed load. Okay, so that's the sort of the IoT stuff that we've seen out there. We've talked a little bit about why hackers do things. What we can look at now, because it's just after Christmas, so lots of people have had new toys and things. We're going to look at some of the stuff that might have appeared under people's Christmas trees and the security of those devices. Okay, we're going to start off with my friend Kayla. Now, and you'll see this. I can't see the chat, but this is a doll, and this is device has been for sale for a little while. So it's clearly designed for little kids. It has batteries in the back. You turn it on, and it's already on, and off it goes. Now we read about these having a bit of a security flaw. Pardon?
Unchecked.
Oh,
You muted it.
So we read about these things having a security flaw, and so we picked one up.
Untitled, notepad window, text editor, editing, talk, 0% vertically scrolled.
Oh, thought this might be quite a complicated thing to do, so Dan and I both enjoy this kind of challenge, so I've been honest, quite looking forward to it. Thought we might, sort of do some sort of very clever tricks, we'd hack into this, maybe upload some, broken firmware, hacking that way. As it turns out, all we needed to do is connect to it via Bluetooth, and it shows up as a speaker and a microphone. So with a computer or even a mobile phone, you can identify these things remotely, because if they're on, they're announcing that they're there and there's a Bluetooth connection. So you could be walking down the street. You can identify these devices very, very easily. You can connect to them with zero authentication. So no passwords, no usernames, no checks. And you can talk to whoever's holding the device. You can either speak through a microphone or, as we've been doing, is using text-to-speech.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you are enjoying the talk. Windows, CRLF, LN1, Col 58, 100%. Title bar, system, collapsed, menu item.
Oh my
menu
goodness,
key
right.
space.
So we've system collapse. This is rather scary. So the frightening thing about this is that you buy this for a young child, and all of a sudden it can start talking to them, and you have no idea where it's coming from. So that's how it got found out. I mean, people had reports of these things just suddenly starting to talk to their kids. You can actually get the kid to talk back. So you could easily be walking along, spot one of these, and hello, I'm your friend. What's your name? Where do you live? Why don't you open the door so I can come in and say hello to your family? Really, really scary possibilities. Okay, that's Kayla. The second one that we're looking at is this robot. So I can restart it if it's.
Yeah, if you can.
So here we go. So if we go for the typical gender stereotypes, then we've covered one half of the kid market because we've got a doll. So we've got the other half of the robots. Although to be honest, the doll seems a lot more fun than this robot. But anyway, apart from sounding quite scary as it is, this has exactly the same problem. So we had both of these devices thinking that we're going to have a couple of interesting challenges and something to divert us from what we were doing, and it took a few seconds to break in. And actually, what's really going on here is that we're seeing that manufacturers of toys are not computer scientists, they're not security experts, and yet they're adding smart devices into these. Almost certainly the contents of these two things, although they look very different on the outside, come from different manufacturers, are going to be very, very similar. So if you wanted to build a smart toy, you don't go to the drawing board and start designing a CPU, you don't start designing new circuit boards, you go and order something pretty much off the shelf. So this is essentially exactly the same as a Bluetooth headset, so microphone and speakers or headphones. So you buy this, you plug it in, you build your toy around it, and off you go. And that's what you do if you were building something that had moving arms and legs. You'd expect to go and buy motors. You wouldn't design them from scratch. You'd buy some standard parts. So all these people are doing is they're applying the same logic to building this that they would apply to building the toys previously. Of course, as soon as something is smart, connected to like Bluetooth or connected to the internet, then it's exposed to actually quite a hostile environment these days. So that's rare too. I'm going to shuffle to the side because we're going to have a quick chat from Dan about the webcam of question intent. Okay. I'll
let you do that while I shuffle this.
So apparently someone said that they're struggling to hear, so I'm just going to see if we can check volume. Looks like everything's on full. Okay. So can everyone else hear? Is everyone hearing okay? Okay, so it might well be just one person. So hopefully they can get it fixed, but it looks like it's not this end. Okay. So over to Dan.
Right, morning everyone. So we're going to talk about the webcam of doom, as I like to call it. So this Amazon standard webcam designed for baby monitoring. So you put in your child's room and you can check on the status of your child while it's asleep. We've got a few interesting security flaws in this, though. So first, it just broadcasts what it's doing across the network. It's trivially easy to find. They actually discovered the security flaw in this because mother was putting her baby to bed. Then when she went to bed, she noticed that the dog's head would turn around and start watching her while she was sleeping. So what we'll try doing is I've got a demo on my laptop, so I'm going to have to point that at the screen because we don't have it on here. But let's try and demo how easy it was to find this stuff. So I need to look at my laptop as well. There we go. So I can't see what's going on. Okay, so we have a piece of software here that's just going to scan the network for it, and we can see it comes up with webcam pretty much instantly. So it's picking it up from the Wi-Fi connection. And now, if I just move to a different screen and push that. So look, shell commands, and we've got the webcam connection coming straight through. So we're able to see, it's a bit laggy, but we're able to see whatever webcam's got. We've got James again. if you want to speak to him. Somewhere. There he is. Yes. And like trivially easy to get into. It was quite interesting, this, because there's the official license Freddy products, and this turns out it's not an official Freddy webcam, which caused us some fun trying to break into it, because it made my job slightly harder in a way, because it's got an very interesting and slightly flawed implementation of the protocol that's used for webcams to communicate over the net, which made it slightly more secure. And then once I'd managed to spend about half a day with Wireshark working out what was going on with the thing, we were then able to get into the protocol and control the camera in the same way as everything else. So it was really quite a good, fun little project, and an interesting insight into how maybe it was slightly more secure accidentally, but we were still able to break in and still able to find out what was happening there. Okay, Garage Door to Hell. This is another project one of our students was taking part in, one of my undergraduate students, and he was looking at using a software-defined radio. So this is an electronic device. It will pick up radio signals over a wideband. Lots of the time it's used for like TV tuners and things, so you can watch TV on your laptop. And he was using that to pick up devices nearby. So we had a doorbell, and he was able to ring his family doorbell. And then he noticed every time his father came home, they had an automatic garage door. And when his father opened the garage door, he'd pick up a spike. There'd be a spike in the signal. So he pulled that signal apart. It wasn't encoded particularly well. So, and was able to then drive the garage door via the software on his PC. So just a simple Python program and the software-defined radio, and be able to open and close his garage door outside of the secure toggle thing that they use to open that. So it's a really fun and interesting project. Again, software-defined radio, you pick them up for about 10 UK pounds. And like very inexpensive and quite an interesting look at the security flaws in the systems there. And now my favorite one. So my adorable little friend here. Can we get him on the webcam?
It should be, if you just hold it up.
Wiggles, though. Okay, so...
Oh, I dream about you now.
Do that. So Furby, I had a lot of fun making this thing. Also, it talks. It's very chatty. Oh. Is that good? Yeah, excellent. It talks. It's incredibly chatty, but it's an interesting little thing. And this is different security issues to Kayla, different security issues to Robot. It talks over Bluetooth. It's unauthenticated Bluetooth, but the way we're getting software onto it is to take advantage of an over-the-air firmware update. So they have, irritating me already. They have downloadable special edition software that you can get from the Furby web store that puts new personalities onto him. And what we were able to do is, I don't know if you can see this, I'll turn it on in a second, is we're able to put together a web app, runs on a mobile phone, that allows us to debug and play with a Furby. For example, we can turn his eyes off, I hope. Excellent. And we can turn his eyes back on again, change the colour of his little head. Where is it? So change the antenna colour to whichever one we want. And this is just sending commands. Sequence of magic packets get sent across via Bluetooth. And again, through sniffing the traffic that was there, or, well, in honesty, we built on the very hard work of our friends at Context, who took apart a lot of this. We were able to do some really interesting things. So, I mean, we can make it talk. What do we want?
Connected.
We can make it beatbox. And the most impressive thing is by fiddling about with the files is we're able to change. Well, we could do this.
You don't know the power of the dark side.
So we're able to modify the code that's on there, modify the eye patterns, change the behavior of things, change the voice. I mean, Darth Vader is definitely a non-standard voice for a Furby, and just modify the way it works, all through taking advantage of its over-the-air update mechanism. And again, this is as worrying as Kayla and the little iRobot, because there's no authentication here. Walk around with my phone on, pick up Furbies and send my malicious version of, malicious version of the software to it, change its personality, get it speaking in different ways, get its eyes flashing up in different ways, get it changing its behavior. Right, so that's enough of that. What are we on? Right, I'll just turn him off and I'll hand back to James.
Me again. So all of this seems, yes, we've broken into some toys, and yes, it was a bit scary that it was so easy. But in reality, what are we going to do with a doll or a robot? The problem is that these are the kinds of devices that we have access to very easily as consumers, but they aren't the only devices that have these kind of smart components. So if we look at the people that work in IoT, so building the systems, and look at the market share, you can see on this graph here, the left-hand side, this is the consumer IoT. These are, the toys, the fridges, the kettles and things like that. And the right-hand side, you can see what we call business IoT. So, most of the people that work in IoT or building devices are actually building things for manufacturing or, smart cities. Health is growing really rapidly. So there's a lot of things going on that we don't always think about if we just see the consumer IoT. We hope in many cases that they have better security, but it really, really depends. Some of these are very well engineered systems. Some of them are no smarter in terms of security than this. People buying components, realizing they can get the job done quickly and cheaply, putting them into whatever device, and off it goes. And it's only when someone comes along that's either a bad guy or a good guy with an adversarial mindset, looks at it and says, well, hold on, what about? So where are we using these things? Well, actually, IoT is used in national infrastructure. So you look at things like, tramways, roads that are being built now made for smart vehicles. They all have these sort of bits of infrastructure that are attackable. There have been lots of cases over the past few years, people displaying messages on billboards on the side of the road that they're not supposed to, taking control of tram signaling and sending trams around like it's their own personal train set. And that's because people are able to get into these things and explore them. They are general purpose computers. IoT in cars. So you might not think of the car as being an Internet of Things type of device, but you've got lots and lots of ways. It pairs with Bluetooth. Modern cars, especially electric vehicles, there's the expectation it's going to connect to Wi-Fi. That you can be able to send your music over Bluetooth. But even going back to much older cars, there are cars that have the update mechanism for the engine management unit is accessed by putting in a specially crafted CD. So if you know about this, and security researchers have found this, and no reason to think the bad guys won't as well, then you can create a CD with your own update mechanism, just like with the Furby, and make use of that to take control of the engine management system. There's a tool called Shodan, which you might have heard of. It's a website. So they call this, I think, the Google for things. But essentially, this is not like a web crawler. So Google goes and looks at what's on the web by following links and looking at all the web services. Shodan looks at devices, and it scans those devices, sees what ports are open, what services are running. So some of that will be the web, but it also picks up then IP cameras, SSH servers, and all kinds of other things. You can see on this map here, where these things are coming from. This is a particular search, so you can see, it's global reach. And here are some of the things that we've found with this. So what's this? Well, this is the control system for some sort of mining operation. Didn't touch it, didn't play with it, but we could have done. This was easy to find because there was no authentication. It was public on the internet. Unfortunately, the people that build these things don't always realize that they've accidentally published, the control system for their operation. This one here is, again, publicly available, publicly accessible. It's something that's right in the middle of the Thames and is to do with pumps. Probably fine. I mean, I can't imagine that's going to be a big deal. This one here is about milligrams per meter squared, so some sort of filtering operation. Again, there's a big button there, unlock instrument. Didn't click it. I'm sure it'll be fine. So these things have problems. We can find these devices, those ones in particular are control systems, so they're things that you wouldn't normally expect to see on the internet, but are there. We've seen lots of toys and how easily they get into. So you might be thinking, well, surely these things are going to get more complex. The other devices out there are not going to be as simple as these. Well, there is a top 10 list of IoT vulnerabilities, so things that people regularly get wrong when making smart devices. So OWASP, so they put together this list. They also have a list for the web, but this is the IoT list, and we're going to go through them. And I think by the end of it, you'll be surprised at just how basic some of these things are. Okay, so this is not the top 10 list of easy things to fix. This is the top 10 list of things that people get wrong all of the time. Right, so number 10, lack of physical hardening. We haven't really seen that with the things that we've been doing today, but if you've got things like smart door locks, garage door openers and things like that that people can walk up to and touch, then you have to be very careful about what they have access to. Many devices would be secure if you had no access to them physically, because you can control that digital interface, web interface, or what ports are open, quite carefully. But as soon as someone can touch it, maybe take the case off, maybe connect other devices to it, maybe find the reset switch, plug in some JTAG connectors, they can start to do quite a lot with it, and that's a big issue. So that's number 10. Number 9. This is the one that allowed things like Mirai to spread, insecure default settings. So people by default having no security. You can't actually enable security on these kinds of devices. Others you can. You can go in and change the default password, or you can go in and increase the level of security. Don't use unencrypted communication, or don't allow people that haven't got an account. But many devices by default are as permissive as possible. It's not very difficult to understand why. If you're making devices, you're making toys, you're making home devices, consumer electronics, you don't really want to give people extra hurdles. If someone comes in and buys your television and they get home and it takes them an hour to work out all the settings, they're going to get really, really upset about it. So part of the problem here is that manufacturers are pushed towards having simple to use things, which means that one of the easy ways to do it is to start jettisoning bits of security. Okay, number 8, lack of device management. So not being able to change stuff, not being able to alter those settings. So maybe you've got the default settings, but you can change them. In many devices, you don't even get a choice of changing it. Okay, so if it uses insecure communication, it's always going to use insecure communication. Maybe you have no way to change which IP address range it expects to be on. So you have to manipulate the rest of your network to suit. Or in the case of things like the original Nintendo DS, you would have to use a particular type of insecure Wi-Fi network. So you had to use web. Number 7, lack of transport encryption. Sounds complicated, but anyone that's used the web and has seen the green padlock icon and seen the HTTPS, that's what we're talking about. Most websites today will use HTTPS, which is secure in the sense that the data that goes from your computer to the server and back again is encrypted. It's taken a while to get to that point where the web is mostly using encrypted information, and it was only through pushes by people like Google who would expect this to happen, warn people when things were insecure, so that customers would think twice about going to an insecure website, that this has happened. In the IoT world, we haven't yet had that push. Okay, so if you go and buy a web camera or something like that, or a baby monitor, very few people buying a baby monitor are going to be asking, if you go into your local, baby shop and say, I need a baby monitor and I want one that uses, TLS version 1.3. That's not going to happen. Okay, so again, very difficult to see how the push is going to happen there, but it needs to happen. Number 6, insufficient privacy protection. So this is really about what kind of data is there and how it's protected. If you imagine things like, if you've got a Fitbit, that needs to know things like, your height, weight, gender, what you're eating, what your activity is like. And that's quite personal information. I'm not saying that Fitbit's insecure. It's actually had lots and lots of people looking at it. It's very high profile and hasn't really been in the news for being insecure. So I imagine it's very, very good. But that's the kind of data that you need to protect. Unfortunately, not everything is well engineered as a Fitbit. Use of insecure or outdated components is my favorite thing to have a rant about. So I have a theory that I think will be proved, but not yet, that we are going to have very, very old computers lying around because of things like smart fridges. So here's the logic behind that. If you are manufacturing fridges and you want to make a smart fridge, as we've seen before, you're probably going to want a standard platform. You don't want to invent the whole thing. You want to just get some sort of general purpose computing device, hook it up to a touch screen, and that's it. So you maybe let it control the fridge or do some smart things, but you want to build software on top of that platform. You don't want to build the entire thing. So you might go and buy something like a Raspberry Pi or BeagleBone or something like that, some off-the-shelf computing that you can embed into this. Great. And that, when you buy it, could be a couple of years old. These are devices that go on the shelf. So the software in there might be a couple of years old. Maybe it wasn't the newest software when it was actually built in the first place. So it could be 3 years old. You then put that into your fridge. That goes, it's all done. You've got a whole range of these. So you build hundreds of them. They go into the warehouse. Maybe they're there for 12 months. They go out, they're sold to a retailer. They'll start off in their distribution center. They'll be stored. They don't just buy one fridge every time they sell a fridge. They'll buy, batches of them. So, this might be in a batch for a few years. So when you buy that fridge, you could be looking at, possibly up to 10-year-old software being in it. How long do you have a fridge for? 10 years? 20 years possibly. Who knows? We don't get to control, how people get rid of the devices that we sell them. So give us another 20 years and we could well have the software running in our homes, controlling our smart fridge that is, 20 years out of date. And that is very frightening. Okay, number 4, lack of a secure update mechanism. So this is exactly what broke this. It's also exactly what broke many other things. So the update mechanism of the Furby, the thing that allows you to send stuff to it, great idea. In fact, if you're thinking about making devices that need to be secure and stay secure, you've got to think about having an update mechanism. Because if you find, for example, oh look, we found a flaw in the Furby, we need to send out an update. That's how it works, just like with Windows. And no one likes having Windows updates, but it's for a good reason. If that update mechanism isn't secure, however, then you get problems like this, where you can send, a carefully crafted malicious update. And we didn't do anything particularly bad with this Furby, but you can imagine it doing much more scary things. Convincing people to go and find mommy and daddy's credit card and tell it the numbers on it. All being sent back to an attacker. You imagine the kind of havoc that you might get if Windows didn't have a secure update mechanism. Yes, this is a toy, but again, remember that these toys are really just the bit that we see. What we're not thinking about very often are the IoT devices that are running our national infrastructure, factories, cars, and so on. Okay, insecure ecosystem interfaces. So this sounds very complicated again, but actually a lot of smart devices, things like the Fitbit or your smart fridge, they get data from other places. So in my home, I have some smart lights, and one of the ways that it works is they go to a service somewhere else in the world, and that tells them whether they should be on or not. Seems like a complicated step, but it means that when I'm away from home, I can use my phone to tell that service what I want my lights to do, and then my lights will also be checking that service. So that's part of its ecosystem. And if that is not secure, then my lights aren't secure. So I can make sure my phone's locked down. I can make sure my home network is secure. And being an IT nerd, that's the kind of thing I would do. But I have no control over that other service. And if that's an insecure service, then my lights are potentially controlled by someone other than me. Number 2, insecure network services. So, in fact, this is quite a topical one at the moment. So anyone's been looking at the news, might have seen the Cisco vulnerability. So this is the Cisco network discovery protocol. So there's been a problem found in this, which has allowed people to break network segregation and access devices that they should be able to. And that is all about sort of almost like non-functional requirements. So you have Cisco phones or Cisco devices. You don't really care about what it does to keep things running. You care about what it does that you need. Well, actually, those other parts can be insecure as well. And number one, terrifying as it is weak, guessable, or hard-coded passwords. So very often things do have passwords, but you can't change them. They are static. Or if you set them up yourself and you use the password swordfish, or the most common password in most password lists is still 123456, then you have this simple and easily guessable password. If we take a look at the Freddy camera, it does have a password, not that stopped us, but the password by default is 123. Okay, and so that's going to be the same for every single one of those. And unless someone changes it, which lots of consumers won't, then you can guarantee that if you hunt for Freddy cameras online, password 123 is probably going to work in at least 80% of them. Okay, so what can you do? Obviously, you could become a cybersecurity professional and help us to fix the world, but that's not the only thing you can do. You can be aware. The problem that we're seeing is that these kind of devices, look like toys, they look like fridges, they look like pieces of equipment in a factory, but they are actually complex computing devices. And just understanding that and thinking about the way we think about security of our PCs, which laptops and things like that, which we know now, most people are aware that they need to be concerned with it, will help a lot. So knowing about these kinds of problems. Settings. If you've got a device and it's got passwords, it's got options to turn on and off security, use them. Actually have a look, see what settings are there. If you think this makes things nice and easy, is it also making it easy for an attacker? Passwords, so change them for a start. So any default passwords that you can change it. It is honestly absolutely amazing how many people stick with default passwords. The worm Mirai, which we talked about earlier, use their default passwords. Some of those devices didn't have hard-coded passwords. They could have been changed, but no one did. Also, use good passwords. Everyone knows all the advice on good passwords, but follow it. And the last one, updates. Apply updates. It's really, really important that if you've got devices that have an update mechanism, that you make use of it. The only way that we can really keep things secure long term is to be able to update them. Unfortunately, this is less like safety. Lots of people talk about the safety of a device and the security of a device. If you have something like this and it's secure today, this one isn't, but if it was a secure device, it doesn't guarantee that it's secure tomorrow. Okay, so someone can discover something new, some new vulnerability. The software that's in there might look secure against current attacks. Someone might discover something new tomorrow, and every device in your home could suddenly be insecure. So apply those updates. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation part. So we have a slot for any questions. Hopefully that was interesting. Yeah, so if you because we've got the everyone should be muted. If you have any questions, if you can type them into the chat, we'll try and answer from there. That you just put that in. Great. And so we've also got a survey link. So if you look, Sally Robinson has just posted. So if you have a look there, this will give you a chance to give some feedback. This will be used. The next talk won't be from Dan and I, but any feedback that comes back is going to help to make all of these talks get better and better. The next one of these is going to be on the 10th of March. Topic to be confirmed. But yeah, probably around business topics. Okay. see someone's typing a question. Did you enjoy that? I mean, does anyone have any of these devices in their home that they're suddenly worried about, or anyone had any strange behavior from their webcams? Okay, so Namara asks if there'll be an email about the next webinar. Yeah, so it'll be this exactly the same as happened for this one. So there'll be information going out. So is there a list that includes all vulnerable smart devices? That's a really good question. There are lists of things out there you'll find that are known insecure, but it changes so often. And there's not really one organization that's keeping track of things. What you can do is look for things like the CVE database, which is actually much more useful because it's not about the devices that are insecure, but the services and software. So any vulnerability that's found, so with things like Mariah that used vulnerabilities in certain types of webcams, those we call it common vulnerability. And what's the, I always forget what these, not exploits, is it?
Evaluation.
Yeah, something like that. So
Score,
the CVE list is a list of vulnerabilities. So it doesn't matter whether it's in a toy or on a PC, it's there. So if you're running software or have certain devices, you can go and look and see, you know, for example, you know, I'm maybe running a web server or something like that. Maybe it's Apache. I can look at the version number that I've got and I can see if anyone's found any vulnerabilities in that particular version of Apache. Devices are a little bit more complicated. Right, so someone's asked about the recorded session. So yeah, so the link to the recording or the recording will be sent out by email, so people can have that. So if you're one of the people that had problems with audio, hopefully when you have the recording, you'll be able to go back and catch the bits that are missed. I think we've got someone typing, so we can have one more question if get there. Can I show you how to use Showdown? A few minutes? Yeah, okay. In that case, yes, I'll give you a quick go. So for devices in Egypt, pop Showdown up here. So everyone see my browser window? Yeah, should be able to. Right. So Showdown, we can look for devices in various ways. So we could look for interesting list of things there. We can look for various things. The explore option is really fun because finding new ways to use the search on here is really interesting, because you can find, for example, if you know a certain type of device has past the login page has a particular phrasing, you can search for that phrasing and then try and find it. So here we go. If we look for webcams, we can see it's found the list, and what it's looking for is a particular sort of set of things. But we can then also look by where these things are. So, oh my goodness, let's see where we've got. So Eastern Europe, Turkey. It's got a small list. So if I click on a country, so we pick Hungary for now, you can see on here that we're looking for webcams in country HU. So actually, don't know what do you know what the country code for Egypt is? We'll find out what the country code for Egypt is, and then we can put that in. Sorry, not the phone number. The time zone.
EG.
Is it EG? Probably could have guessed that actually.
Yeah.
So have a look. So here we have, So here we have all of the things in Egypt. what we can do is we can actually go down to cities, or we can start looking at services. So we can look at things like, what's using HTTP. So that's basically our web stuff. Or we could look for things like SSH, which is secure shell. Or we could look for.
Failed. That would be one.
That does look interesting, doesn't it?
So it's going to be a login page that's gone wrong.
Here, for example, we've got something from Link Egypt. It's only running one service, so it's running on port 80, which is the web. And there's a thing we can. Click, so we can. Now, am I logged in? I think I might be. Yeah. So, what we can do is we can actually look for visual output. So, by that I mean things like VNC connections and stuff. So, VNC doesn't work, so remote desktop does so, doesn't it? RDP. Here we go. So if I look for things that are running RDP, we can find things that have literally a visual connection, so remote desktop connections. As we scroll through, you can see, for example, here we can find ones that have got all their usernames, useful information for an attacker. Very often, you'll find ones that don't have any authentication, so you'll find that it's dropped right into a remote desktop. But because that was the request earlier, let's combine those two parts. So here I'm looking for RDP, so we're looking for remote desktop protocol devices in Egypt. Oh, doesn't have any. That's good. Well done, Egypt. Not having things advertised on the internet. Okay, so that showed that you can do a hell of a lot more with it. It is worth exploring. I mean, even if you're not into cybersecurity, just to get an idea of the sort of things that are out there and how easy it is to track things down. Sorry, we have a smart building that.
I'm the smart building.
Is yeah.
Wipe me up,
so no problem. Thanks, then. Turn us this way. Okay, so I think that's all we've got time for. If anyone suddenly realizes they've got some other questions about this, then I'm sure they'll find their way back to us and we can get an answer to you if you email through the. We'll figure it out. So however you got here, speak to those people. And if you have any burning questions, I'm sure they'll get to us. Dan and I are always excited to talk about cybersecurity. So. And before you go, please follow the survey link and give some feedback. Tell us what you liked about it, what you think could be improved, and hopefully you all enjoyed yourselves. We certainly did. We got to play with toys for the morning, so that's always good. And other than that, thank you very much, and I'll cut it there.